Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last but not least interview of the Grand Multiliteracy event, where we'll be talking about multilingual teenagers and how we can help them maintain and develop their literacy skills in different languages. To talk about this topic, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Ute Limacher-Riebold. Some of you know already that Ute and I have a YouTube channel together. We've collaborated on several projects together. But this YouTube channel is called Activities for Multilingual Families, and we present various activities to help children develop their languages in a compelling way, so in a way that's motivating and fun. So I have put this channel in the description and others as well. So Ute has loads of resources. I put everything underneath. But just to present Ute, for those of you who don't know her, she's a linguist, researcher, and expert in multilingualism and intercultural communication, with decades of experience empowering multilingual families and professionals worldwide. On her platform, Ute's International Lounge and Academy and multilingualfamilies.com, she bridges research and practice with tailored consultation, online resources, courses, workshops, and webinars. Her expertise includes fostering multiliteracy, debunking multilingualism myth, and developing effective communication strategies for families, schools, organizations, and institutions. She shares generously her knowledge on her Facebook group called Multilingual Families and on her 4 YouTube channels called Ute's International Lounge, Multilingual Families, Activities for Multilingual Families, and Raising Multilinguals' Lives. So welcome, Ute. It's a real honor and pleasure to have you with us to talk about this very interesting topic.
Thank you very much, Yoshita, for having me and for organizing this event, which is amazing. Thank you.
Okay. And so before we start the interview, I also would like to remind everyone that you're generously making your ebook, your ebook free for the weekend. So you haven't yet tonight to download it on Amazon. So you just go on Amazon, select the ebook version, and then you can download it for free. So thank you very much for this, Ute. And also, one thing I guess I could mention, because we're talking about the book, is to make sure you leave a review, because as authors, it helps us a lot to first to know how you find the book, but it also encourages others to get interested in the book as well.
Thank you.
And so I would like to start by, so you have 3 multilingual, multicultural, and multiliterate adult children. Can you please tell us what languages they speak and in what linguistic context they have been growing up?
Yes, sure. So as you said, they are all adults. My son is 22 and my daughters are 19 and 19. They're twins. And they all grew up in a multilingual setting and exposed to several languages and dialects also used by us, the parents, by our friends, by family, and also by the community. So I grew up multilingual myself. I'm a linguist, as you said, simultaneous, and so did also my children. So my son was born in Italy, and my husband spoke Swiss German with him, and I spoke Italian with him. And together with my husband, we spoke German. So it's OPOL, it's extended OPOL kind of strategy. So the community language was Italian, but we also had many friends who spoke French and English. So he heard us speaking other languages as well. So when our son was about 2.5 years old, we moved to the Netherlands. So Dutch and English became the community language. And our twin daughters were then born just a year later. And when they were around 15 months old, they started using a secret language among them, which wouldn't be a problem because I know it can be just a phase. But when this led to frustration and also became a problem for the communication between them and their brother, so we decided with our son to give it a try and to use German as the primary family language. And this worked. This was okay. So we continued using Swiss, German, and also Italian, but a little bit more in the background. So they were all using it anyways, German, so it was not a completely new language. They use it to different extent with extended family and also with the babysitter. So it's not a completely new language that we just imposed to them. Then I mentioned that we moved to the Netherlands, and so increased also the exposure to English and Dutch. So the languages used daily, they shifted. I share about now what is called also the dominant language constellation, that it can change considerably also over time in a chapter that will be published in October. And I'm going to share quickly a slide. So here you can see the language constellation that we had in our family in the past years. So starting from when we moved to the Netherlands. And yes, also the link or the QR code on the right is to that book that is going to be published in a few weeks. And I also share another post that I wrote on the website about dominant language constellation, which is the model to visualize our use of multiple languages. So, but back to the children. Let's just go back to the screen as well. Over the years, each child, so each one of them developed different dominant languages depending on the context. And our son started with Italian, Swiss German, and German, like I just said, and in Italian, yeah, with receptive understanding of French and English in Italy. Then in the Netherlands, he added actively Dutch and English quite quickly before school age. And our daughters had less exposure to Italian, but grew up with Dutch and with English from day one, in addition to our home languages. So later, all three of them also learned French and Spanish at school for a few years and used them all to very different levels of proficiency, I must say. Today, their academic language is mainly English, but they can also read in German and Dutch and could also do the same for Italian. They used to know a little bit less because they did their exams, etc., but they could if they had to. And same goes also with French and Spanish, which they learned at school, but never really used actively that much. So reading and writing is a bit harder. So this said, they keep practicing some of the languages they are less proficient in. So for example, one of my daughters is currently improving her Italian skills. The other one is teaching herself Thai because she loves it. And my son taught himself some Japanese, Chinese, and Russian when he was a teenager. And this because he was motivated by studying Russian history and a trip to Russia. And then he loved manga, so there comes Japanese. And Chinese, because he had two very, very dear Chinese friends. So I always say never underestimate teenagers and their power of self-motivation. It's really amazing to see. But like many other multilingual teens and young adults, I know that because I also work with some, they navigate shifting constellations of languages depending on their studies, on their friendships, and on their interests.
One question I wanted to ask you. So you said at some point, so when you were in the Netherlands, you decided your family language was going to be German. How did you decide on that language? How did you pick that language?
Well, at that point, we sometimes were already speaking German when all together. I mean, when together with our son, who was speaking quite fluently. He was 2.5 years old when we arrived, but then 3.5 when our daughters were born, and then a year later, even more. When we were all together, we spoke German. Yeah. Also because we wanted them to become active users of German in order to be able to speak with our extended family and the German friends. And then we had a babysitter also. She was speaking German with them, so that was amazing. We had this one person, one language kind of situation. with having Melanie speaking German with them before we then decided to have German as our family language. But still, because otherwise every multilingual family, I think yours as well, sometimes when you speak as a family at the table and you have two different languages coming from the parents, then there are always situations where you want to share something with all together and you don't want to have to shift constantly. And so that made it a little bit easier. And then also it was as I said, our aim for our children to become fluent also in German and confident enough. So when we shifted to German as family language, that was actually a little test. I said, okay, let's see how it goes. Maybe it's not the solution. But our son said, yes, that's okay. He agreed with that. The girls were still too young, let's say, to decide about this. But when we saw after a few weeks that they stopped the secret language and were very eager to communicate in whatever language we were talking to them, then we said, okay, this was a good decision. And we still kept Swiss German and Italian in the background a little bit. So this was shifted a little bit in the background, but still present, because we have also part of the family who speaks Italian and Swiss German. So that was also important.
I think like one thing you mentioned that's very important to keep in mind is that, like you said, we just tried it out to see how it goes, because sometimes we plan things, but it doesn't go the way we want. So we need to be able to shift between different strategies.
Yeah, but the important, I think, is anyways, in this kind of constellation that we had, was not to use a language that, for example, our son, as he was the main person of interest in that kind of situation, that he could communicate with confidence, not a language that he's also just learning or trying to figure out how it works. So that is the main thing here, also to take into account.
Thank you. And so we're going to talk about teenagers and multiliteracy, but so I wanted to start maybe from the beginning. How did your children learn to read in their different languages? And also maybe one thing that we often think about is compared to the school language. So I believe your children all had English as a school language. Was that Dutch as well? Was it just English?
No, it was also a little bit of Dutch, but they started with English. But maybe I can start from the beginning. It's true. Yeah, we want to focus on teenagers, but somehow, how do they get there, or what teenagers
Yeah.
are we talking about? Right. That's maybe one thing to think about. But yeah, so reading was actually something very central for us from the start. So my husband and I, we are both eager readers, and yes, we read a lot with our son already, and then also with our children daily, German and Italian and the Swiss German, which is a language that is not written. So my husband had the pleasure to translate on the spot all kind of books.
Yeah.
When our children said, "Oh, read this and please your language." So, but we read also Dutch and English when we were in the Netherlands, of course, and the children would bring home also books, or we just decided to have that as multilingual island, right? So that we would read also in the other languages. So they learned, let's say, the reading skills start already when they look at the pictures, right? In picture books. It's not necessarily the decoding, but if they looked at pictures and wanted to know what this meant, or how this was called in the target language, we would tell them. Or when they wanted to know what these letters on this page meant, or we sounded them out. And we also played games with finding words that started with the first letter of their names. And we played many of these games that Annelisa and I share in the toolbox for multilingual families. Again, today you can download the e-book version of it for free. So I did not teach my children how to read, but they knew what reading was before the school started. So they knew what we were doing because I read out loud. So they knew in this book, on this page, there's something happening, that Mama is always reading the same kind of stuff over and over again. But they formally learned to read in English first, and a little bit later also in Dutch. That was provided by school. And meanwhile, we continue to nurture all languages at home, like I said, in these multilingual islands that I mentioned before. So what we did was that we welcomed all the languages at home. So I know that some say, no, you just have to speak or use your language with your children. And we had 3, 4 languages at times. But I found it important that we create a multilingual environment, and that is like Ellen Rose and Miriam de Oliveira mentioned the other day when they were talking about the language-friendly school, right?
Yeah.
If schools are so welcoming to other languages, why shouldn't the home be? And we
Yeah.
can create the same, right? Because if I send my child to a school where another language is spoken, I want them to know I'm not sending you into the Sahara or, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. I want them to also feel that I accept that and I want to learn as well. Or, yeah, they can always teach us, even if we learn the language
Yeah.
before them. But I think it's more motivating for them to improve their school language and also our home languages. But well, every family does it their own way, and do it with the tools and the means that they have. Now, English is, as we were talking about, yes, reading. English was the first language they learned to read. And as you mentioned, I think in other interviews, well, English is a rather obscure language, right? Where you have the grapheme or letter and phoneme or sound correspondence that is not one-on-one, yeah?
Mm.
So, which means that one letter combination can be pronounced in many different ways. On the other hand, German is a slightly less obscure, or let's say maybe more transparent language when it comes to sounds. It's much more tricky when it comes to the morphology and syntactical level, but I don't want to complicate things. So, and Italian is even more transparent. So as the letter sound correspondence is almost one-on-one. It felt easier to decode. So we were happy, or we were lucky that we had easier decodable languages at home.
Yeah.
So, and I can share one episode when my son was between 7 and 8 years old. He once, they often read books to each other. Even my daughters, they weren't able to read yet, but they would just, go with a finger and make up stories and stuff. And he was reading an Italian book to his sisters. And then he said, he observed it was easy peasy to read. So it didn't require so much effort because he was used to make much more effort to decode English texts than Italian ones. So I was amazed to see this in a 7, 8-year-old child, that he would make this comment. But okay, of course, our children are great. But they, what they also did was to compare the different ways to write sounds. For example, the sh sound in German is sch, and in English is sh, etc. But every time they had questions about what this would mean, we have the vowels with the 2 dots on top, the umlaut in German, and sometimes they got mixed up with the ü and ö because it seemed that it sounds very similar, but it doesn't for the trained ear. And it's very important that our children then make these kind of connections as well across their languages very early on. But what I found the most tricky when my children were starting to decode texts in different languages was to understand if they understand what they're reading.
Yeah.
Because this is also something that I noticed at school. I often went in and we read stories together, so I could see also my son in the school setting and see how other children who also were exposed to other languages would decode a text, a new text. And I was amazed to see that many children can be very good at decoding and sounding out words. And they sounded like, I always said, like little British people, you know, with really the typical British accent. What for me, I'm not British accent speaker, but they could sound out everything nicely, but I wasn't sure that they would understand. And then I started a little bit observing them. And you can actually see this when they struggle of understanding, when somehow their gaze becomes a little bit blank. Then you can ask like probing questions or open questions and notice that maybe they didn't grasp the plot or really what it is about.
Yeah.
So I always say I stopped sometimes, and maybe you don't read these, I don't know, 2-3 pages, but only 1 page, but at least you're sure that the child understands what is on the page. And so this reminds me also of what Stephen Krashen says about the comprehensible input, right? We also interviewed him at Raising Multilinguals Live. So if the text is understandable for the child, then the decoding helps them to somehow have a better relation with the text itself. It stays better, and they will also memorize certain words easier if they have them in a context that they can make sense of.
Yeah.
So, but we also have to be somehow realistic, because our children don't want to be at home, don't want to be constantly learning and be in the school mode, even those who are very eager.
Yeah.
So my children did not have consistent formal instruction in their heritage languages, but we tried to do this, but they found it too boring. We can talk about this later. So what we did was to make sure that there was always some Lesefutter, we call it like that in German. I like this term because it's food for reading or reading matter. So all kind of magazines, books, posters, whatever there was with that could get their attention, and they would just grab and have a look at, and then let somewhere.
And I think it's much better to do it that way, where you leave things around for them to choose to do it. And I think like in school, for example, especially the English department is a very they communicate a lot about the pleasure of reading, etc. And they're trying to find different ways, but they shared with us that in primary school, generally children love to read, but when they get to secondary school, because a lot of the reading they do is in lessons, they lose that love of reading. And so that's why they do a lot of initiatives to get students to read more just for pleasure. But I think it's especially in the home language where they don't have to, it's important to keep it like reading for pleasure.
Yeah. And sometimes it's also, I mean, in some schools, you have some areas where they can sit in the corridor next to the classrooms, you know, when they have recess or so, and just leave some books there. It doesn't need to be all in the library. It can be also in other places where they can, oh, look at that book and share it with others, and who cares? I mean, but what we also had were audiobooks, a lot of audiobooks, because we like them, and picture books, you know, that you can read in all kind of languages, and well, mangas, etc. But you wanted to talk about the teenagers, right? So for the teenagers, I think that motivation is key. But mine were more eager, for example, to read German and Italian when we were visiting the countries, and they would see peers speaking the language. They would see, you know, the signs everywhere, and the newspapers were in the languages. So they would naturally be attracted to everything that was written there. And it makes much more sense than learning to read in German in a classroom or even at home sometimes, because then at some point you have read all the books that maybe we had, and
Yeah.
well, even if you try to get more Lesefutter somewhere somehow, but it's not the same as living and growing up in that context. And now for teenagers, I would like to say something that I observed also in some of the children of my clients. So my daughter, for example, like others, she is currently improving her Italian just because she wants to, and because she
Mm.
has friends who speak it, and because she wants to go to Italy and etc. My other daughter is improving her German writing skills as well, because she's going to spend a semester in a German-speaking country soon. So she needs to be ready for that. So that is motivation. That is quite something. And as for my son, that I find very impressive, and I'm very proud of that. I'm not biased at all. Is he read Nietzsche and Kant in German for his study, which is, I mean, even for me, it's difficult. And I think he also read Hegel, but I have to check this. So he chose to read the text in the original language. There was no one telling him to do this. So he chose to
Yeah.
do this because he didn't have to, but he wanted. And he did that also because they sounded more authentic. He said they sound more authentic. And he said there is so much that gets lost in translation, literally. So he had the feeling that reading them in their original language opens even more the world of what they were describing. So they're all not afraid to go this extra mile to improve their skills, whether it is reading, writing, or speaking. And I think that is what this is all about, right? So
Yeah.
we as parents and as teachers, we scaffold the multilingual learners' knowledge about language and everything they need to know. And then at some point, they take over and they take the lead. And I think that is the most important thing, right?
I think, yeah, one thing I think is really important in what you say is that we need to set this environment where they can be curious. That we need to create opportunities for them to be curious and wanting to read and explore these languages without forcing them, especially when they're teenagers. And from what I understood about what you said is that you focus more on reading, so getting them to know the language, etc. But then for the writing, because there is not, it's not just decoding, you need to spell, especially in English. Well, English was a spoon language, but there is the grammar, syntax, etc. So that aspect, you left it more for them to explore when they were motivated. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I let them explore the language when they were ready, and the way they wanted to do this. So so you want to know more about the writing now?
Yeah, if you can say so, was it just that you let them? So, did you do anything for them to improve on their writing, or maybe when they were younger, or did you really just leave it for them to improve their skills when they decided to?
I followed their lead. Also because I thought they're at school the whole day, and I don't want them to feel like learning how to read and write in German is a burden.
Hmm.
But it's actually something that they really like to do. And so we had some, yeah, we wrote some cards, the Christmas cards and etc. That we did, or we left some notes. I read some wrote some notes in their lunchbox, and they would reply, and so little sentences here and there. And I think, yeah, you mentioned it also in some of the videos, right, on our YouTube channel. But and we did some games, but not every day, not every week, not every month, the same amount.
Yeah.
So that was very, very much, yeah, their children's agency that dictated that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to also come back on one thing you mentioned about English. So letting English in your house, so there's school language in the house, and because some parents might think, okay, we have these languages at home and we need to do most of it, but not English. I'm going to refer back to what during what we heard during the interview on the language-friendly school. It's the I guess the opposite. In school, we shouldn't like forbid the home language because it's part of the identity. But home, it's the same. Like English and the language they are learning in school is part of the identity as well. It's the language they use with their friends, so we should welcome it as well.
Absolutely, yes. I recently defined it also the how to create a language-friendly home, in analogy to the language-friendly school. So because our children need to also communicate with us what they are doing at school, right? And if we block that, and they are still in the school language mode, they want to talk about this. They need to do some writing, reading in the school language. If we completely ignore that, we miss a chance to then make sure that first of all they feel seen and accepted everything that they're doing, but also empowered to then transfer what they learned there in the home language. So I think it's pretty much what you just said. Yeah, we need to create that kind of environment at home as well.
So now I would like to talk more about your maybe the clients you help, because your children speak loads of languages, but they all share the same script. But I'm guessing some of your clients have children who need to learn different scripts or different writing systems. Are there some questions, frequent questions you get from them regarding literacy, and what advice do you give them so to answer their questions?
Yes, so when it comes to that, it obviously depends also about when they start reading.
Yeah,
Maybe I can also start a little bit with a theory here, because
yeah,
our children learn that what is written on a page or a screen or whatever, a wall, can be decoded and have a meaning. But the rules for decoding differ from language to language. You read from left to right or right to left or up down or down up or whatever it is. I talk about this orthographic transparency or opacity before, but still reading requires a considerable set of skills. Yeah, and writing now requires also a great set of skills. So if we talk now more about writing, they need to have the knowledge about grammar, spelling, structure, and style. And that varies greatly across the languages. So I like to share just a little
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
um, the writing rope from
yeah.
John Sedita, which is based on the reading rope from Hollis Scarborough. And it's a very powerful model to understand the complexity of writing and how different strands of skills weave together. So there's critical thinking, syntax and grammar, the text structure, the writing craft and transcription, etc. So for multilingual learners, it is now very important that it makes visible which sub-skills they need to develop. And they need to develop the other skills for the reading. So it's quite complex. And it's also indicating a little bit how the teachers can work with that, but we can come back to that in a moment afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to telling parents or helping parents with I'll come back to the screen, to the different kind of scripts, what I do tell them, it depends on when the child starts learning that language. So when the child is very young, you can already have all kind of books on the table, right? Children learn how to decode different scripts very early on, around age 4, says the research, but it can also be much earlier sometimes. And so they are exposed to it. They see that there are different signs depending on whether it's one parent or the other parent reading the book.
Mm.
When the child is older, because some parents miss a little bit the opportunity to transmit their language with the other script earlier, then you can introduce it as well. But of course, a teenage child has another approach of learning a different script, right, than a younger child. So it's a little bit like adults, because you base it on what you already know. And here I sometimes say, well, it's not that easy sometimes, but what I suggest them to do is to have a look at the similarities. There are always kind of similarities, even if it's just the punctuation or other signs on the page. Or you say one reads from the left, the other from the right, but it's still horizontally. It's not diagonal or whatever. So it can be very basic kind of similarities. But then, for example, if you have, I don't know, Arabic, if children learn Arabic numbers, and compare it to our way of counting and writing numbers. I did this actually with some teachers once in a workshop, and they said, oh, well, we can learn a few numbers within a few minutes. And so can children. So for example, the number 1 is almost the same kind of sign, or that the number 4 in Arabic has the same structure, a bit like the 3 that we use, just
Yeah,
the other
we
way
compare
around.
it to what we know already.
Exactly. Exactly. So you compare it a little bit of what you know, and then let's say the threshold to access the other language is much lower.
Yeah.
And then you build from that, because if from 0 to 9 you get to learn maybe 5 numbers by making this comparison within a few minutes, you can imagine what you can do for the rest.
Yeah.
So I think it's more approaching this other language with curiosity, also as a parent, not from necessarily very adult and function or descriptive kind of way,
Yeah.
but from a learner that is younger and curious and has maybe another perspective on that. So we can introduce these languages at any time, we know this. But when it comes to reading and writing, of course, it's another thing. They don't only sound different, but they are written in a different way. And there are formal and informal kind of languages that they need to learn. In German, there are the different articles. My children always struggled with the articles because they were much more fluent in English, and in German sometimes they don't remember, because if you don't read it or if you don't use certain words very often, then you struggle. Is it now der, die oder das? Oder
Yeah.
ein oder eine
Yeah.
oder einer?
The difference between just reading something that's written that you just need to, well, you accept it and you understand the meaning without paying attention to the details. And when you produce, it's more difficult. Like the same way my sons get confused between masculine and feminine with quite often.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Eva. We have
Yeah.
two comments. I'm going to read them one after the other. But Eva is saying that Japanese has a very distinct way of counting. But I think it's quite straight. It's really straightforward in Japanese. So talking about teaching people to count in, now to learn the numbers, I taught. So once my form class wanted to do other things, so I taught them to count in Japanese, and the form lasts 20 minutes, but in 10 minutes they understood how to count and how to write the numbers from 1 to 99. So yeah, it's very straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Franklin, so I did a comment, I think echoes what you said before, but he says, my experience is that children need our support to be introduced to a language until they reach a level where they can at least understand it in a general way. After that, it becomes easier for each child to find their own motivation.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I think this is what sometimes scares some parents, because they think, now I need to teach my child how to speak, to read and write for the next 20 years. It is not the case, especially because they are also schooled, so they learn a lot of skills at school. But then we can work together also with the teachers and make sure that they cover the same subjects also at home, and that they learn the terms also in the home language, this in speaking, right? And if we repeat it over and over again, and maybe we have also a text, or we have a movie that we can watch, or that we go and visit a museum or any site in that country where you see the signs and everything in that language, then that helps to memorize the scripts as well, not only the terms that somehow float in our head and we don't know exactly how they are written, but then we see them written, and then we see them written 1,000 times and they stick. Sometimes they stick when we see them written only 5 times. Doesn't need to be 1,000 times, but still. So yes, up to a certain level of fluency or proficiency, we need to guide them. This is what I mean with scaffolding as well, right? We scaffold what the children are learning. We guide them, we help them if they have questions. And at some point, we will notice that they have less and less questions because they know where to find the answers. And this is also something where I encourage everyone to use more dictionaries, use more, because what I noticed, I don't know, Yochito, if you noticed this as well, but I used also to teach languages, and sometimes I gave them the dictionaries. I love dictionaries. And I told them, look up the word. And sometimes they didn't know where to look at, the alphabet. Everyone should know the alphabet, but then finding the different words and knowing that what comes first and what comes after. Many children cannot use the dictionaries anymore.
Yeah, or to understand that for one word you have different definition, different translations. You don't just pick the first word. You need to read the examples to make sure
Yeah,
it's the right one.
and then also use dictionaries in the same language, where then a term is explained with an example and with quasi synonyms. That is also useful, very useful to build vocabulary and to expand the vocabulary, because you don't constantly have to translate between the languages, which is also something that I personally don't find very useful, especially if you are simultaneous multilingual and you learn a new language. Then you don't necessarily want to translate all the time. You want to dive into the new language and understand how it works. There are different multilingual learners. Yeah.
And I just want to come back on that motivation and like getting our children to find the motivation to explore the writing. It's not just reading, but writing because it's more difficult. And one way I motivated my eldest, so he's in year 8 now, so second year of secondary school, uh, and so to work on his writing in French. So before we were doing it really, how to say, in not like in a classroom, basically. Just so when we're writing letters, I would help him and ask him questions about, do you think at the end of the you put a X or a T? Then I would explain why, etc. So it wasn't really, not really formal, but now he is in secondary school. He's going to take soon his GCSEs. And the fact that there's a French GCSE and he can already speak it quite fluently, read it, and understand it. Really, the only skill he needs to work on is writing. So that motivated him as well to focus a bit more on writing. So if you have an exam in that language, that can also be a motivation to focus on the writing.
Absolutely, yes. But unfortunately, we don't have schools that cover all our home languages, right? Our heritage languages. If we are lucky, like we were with German for my children, or like I was, that I could go to an international school with a German section and do all the curriculum in German, although living abroad, then we have to somehow find other ways. And not every family has this advantage.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about. So we talked about what we can do as parents. So basically creating an environment where they can become curious, and helping them develop their skills, and then letting them be curious and explore their curiosities in different languages. But for literacy, some parents choose to send their children to complementary school, like or Saturday school. I was wondering, is there a tip you would like to give to parents, and then we can talk about teachers? But as a parent, you think, okay, they're going to learn to read and write in schools. Should you still do things at home, or what kind of advice would you give?
I think it pretty much depends on every single family. Some families have time and can also want to follow their children. Others can't because they travel a lot, and then they ask someone else to take maybe more care of providing input and providing a certain formal instruction in the home language. And some send them then to Saturday schools or weekend schools, or how they are called. And here I would like to just show you another slide where Krista Economida just wrote a great post about this on multilingualfamilies.com website. And we have also a list of heritage language playgroups and schools on our site. But I must say that just to answer your question, or try to answer your questions, I don't have all the solutions, but what I saw in the years that I'm focusing on multilinguals is that heritage schools succeed when they foster the cultural identity and the pride also to be able to speak, read, and maybe also write the language. So I think that is the main thing. Now, Saturday schools or heritage programs succeed when the children feel that it's like an adventure, not an extra school. Some are okay with that. Yoshita, I have a message that the power is off in 1 minute. I don't know if you have the same.
No, is that your computer?
I have no idea. No, I have no idea. I hope not.
Okay, yeah, I hope not. No.
Shouldn't be, because it's all fine set. But anyways, if I disappear, I'm sorry. I hope I can jump up again. But so sometimes with older children, it's even better if then they have also a clear curriculum, because for teenagers, we want them to also be able to focus on something that is necessary for them, because it becomes more and more important that academic achievement becomes more and more important. So what works there for the motivation is project-based learning, for example, culturally rich materials, not all. Rolf, help.
Oh, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I see that I'm coming back in a moment, just from another computer.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that was my...
Oh, it's good you have a backup.
Yeah, I have a backup. I always have a plan B with almost
Wow.
everything. Touching wood, No. So yes, that I was saying that it's good also to have the culturally rich materials, but not only in with regards to things that are related to the culture of the language, but also with the culture of the children. So like what they are interested in, the peer culture, so to say. And then also subjects, when subjects are taught in the heritage language, it's even more motivating. For example, if you are passionate about geography and you learn something about geography in your heritage language, that opens doors. If you want to maybe study in your heritage country where your parents come from, or one of your parents come from, this is an opportunity that not many have. Yeah. And even in international schools or schools that are very language friendly and they offer a curriculum in those languages, they often offer only up to a certain level of proficiency, and quite too often it's only B2, maybe B1, B2. But what you need in order to study is C1 or better. So that is something to also always take into account and to be aware of when it comes to this. For example, just what teenagers need, for example, is to be able to write formal emails, yes, to apply for a university or for a job. To write to HR department or a plumber or whatever. I was just going through this with one of my daughters, and I said, yeah, we need these kind of skills, and they are not taught by school. So this is one thing where I say school cannot do everything. yeah, we can complete a little bit what the school did by adding something at home, at weekend schools, or wherever we can.
Something
And
is
yeah.
he's adding, so on this note, that another important way is having a pen pal or participating in a school exchange. And he said that he's lucky that so his school offers that, I guess, to his children.
Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe as a teacher, I think, do you teach, Franklin? Not sure when you say our school offers that, but yeah, it can be quite motivating to have like peers who speak another language and to make the language worthwhile. So being able to speak in that language. And I,
Yes.
I remember at university when I was studying cinema, but I was going to go on an exchange, and they gave us English lessons specifically for the students who are going on an exchange, learning, for example, to write emails, so
Mhm.
the professors, or it was writing a CV if you wanted to find a part-time job, etc. So all these skills that you're talking about is really when we see the goal, it's a lot more motivating to take this in than if it's imposed or you don't know why you're doing this or that.
Yes, absolutely, because it's goal oriented, right? So
Yeah,
if you know why you are doing it, you are much more motivated, and you put in much more effort, energy, and time. And yeah, so I know that when we talk about motivation, it can be anything, right? It seems like a term that it could be everything, but in fact, it is something that has to do with the real world and real life of our children. What do they need? They're interested in history. They want to learn about history. Then that it is. So it's. But when it comes then to writing, of course, reading and writing, I mean, the spelling or grammar is one thing, but generating an idea, structuring a text, a writing craft as it is, and also the critical thinking in our heritage languages. It's not something that you do every day,
yeah,
right? You talk about home kind of stuff or family stuff, but not about that. So this is why I find it very important uh, to invite the school language so that we know what our children are able to do at school, because there
yeah,
they do this. And then we can do the same things at home, not all of it, because I mean, we don't have 48 hours only because we have two languages, or even more if we have more languages. So we try to squeeze in those little parts wherever we can, but we can foster it, but we can also do it in a playful way, right? So
yeah,
like you share in your book, and we share in our toolbox,
yeah.
and I
On
think,
our channel, we have lots of activities
and we
about.
have lots of activities about that. So I think it doesn't need to be daunting and a chore. Whenever it becomes like that, it's not motivating.
And so Eva is saying that, so she's saying, my sons have always taken pride to connect with their mom's country, Spain, through football. So it can't really be anything.
Anything, yes, or cookbooks, cooking. I remember that when my children were learning, fractions and everything at school, and we were cooking, and we
Yeah,
had to
it's so
measure.
helpful. Yeah,
That's helpful. And then all of a sudden they knew that drei Viertel is three quarters. And so, okay, you use it to make your brownies or whatever it was, but still.
yeah,
But I find it also very, very interesting to see once they achieve, like, I don't remember who said it, sorry, a certain level of proficiency, they can also ask for what they need. For example, if someone says, oh, I have a good idea, but I need some linking words, for the text, or
yeah,
I know the grammar, yeah, okay, this big thing, but my paragraphs need a better organization. What should I put at the
yeah,
top and at the end? And then, especially the text structures in emails, for example, they differ so much across languages.
yeah,
Some go straight to the point, and others tell a story, and then the rest
yeah.
And my children who grew up here in the Netherlands, and they like to get straight to the point, sometimes they write these kind of mails also in other languages, and then I have to say, you should say, I hope this mail finds you well, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It was nice meeting you last week, etc., before going to the nitty-gritty of what they want to say. But they pretty much do a lot of this lately, so I see it's working. So
There's Franklin who is adding regarding his daughter. He says, our daughter is currently spending 3 months in France. So, from what I understood from our previous conversations, they don't have French as a home language. It's probably a language she learned in school. And the beginning is not easy for her, but it will be a valuable experience for her life.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I remember at our school we also had the possibility to spend a year abroad in another country and then continue. You know, you lose a year, but actually you gain
So much experience.
so much experience. And I always encourage people to do this. Also, if you study maybe at university or so, it can be during school time or later. But spending some time in another country, but it can also be during summer holidays, right? They have so many weeks. You can spend them somewhere,
Yeah.
maybe work somewhere or study somewhere, or do this kind of full immersion into it
Yeah.
to
So,
build that confidence.
we were getting towards the end of like the hour, and I was wondering if there was anything we haven't mentioned or touched on that you would like to share with parents, or maybe uh, like maybe the if you had to share one piece of advice or summarize something with parents, well, what would that be?
Oh, that's difficult. You know that I never can say only one thing. I'm really
That's fine. We
struggling.
still have some time.
There are always so many things to say. But yes, I know we always say every child is different, and it's in fact it is like that. And also siblings can be quite different. And I want also to draw the attention to the fact that it differs whether a child is simultaneous or successive bilingual or multilingual, and when the other languages are added, etc. And literacy in general is a lifelong journey. It never stops. Yeah, it doesn't stop once a child can read and write, but it's something that can be fostered throughout the whole life. So reading widely, writing for real purposes, and engaging also with content that matters most is very important. And as I said before, schools do not provide all our children need, so we need to make
Mm,
sure that the rest somehow we fill the gaps, and we work together with the teachers or the school. That would be ideal, and also with the community, maybe the heritage language school or whoever else is providing more input for our children. But also build on what a child or a teenager or a young adult already can do, and go from there. And I think I don't remember, I couldn't watch all the other interviews, but I know that some said try not to compare them to the norm that is a construct, right? Not reflecting really reality. I know that Alessia Raineri mentioned it, and also Erwin Crisfield. And this is easier, of course, for parents than for teachers who need to lead our children to various milestones. But yeah, rich input, motivation, and a lot of opportunities, and a lot of patience as well. Sometimes it's good to slow down and take a look at what they can do, and provide the context that they can grow no matter what. If maybe the school cannot be supportive as much as they can be in the place you're living now or later. But yeah, so multiliteracy is not a skill, it's an asset and a resource for life.
nice way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
There is Franklin who is asking how we can contact you or get in touch with you. I think I put all your websites and YouTube channels, your LinkedIn, I believe, in the description. So I guess any way
Yes, anyway,
is there a best way or?
no, there is no best way. It depends on where I am at the moment, where you are looking for me. But if you try to contact me at through my websites or through my email, I will respond as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to have this discussion with you about multiliteracy, teenagers, and how to motivate them or find a way to motivate them to for them to improve on their literacy skills. It was great to get your input from a mother's point of view, but also consultant who's helping loads of different families. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for organizing this. And I'm looking forward to watching all the other interviews.
Thank you.
Those who I missed so far.
Thank you. And
Thank
so
you.
we're getting to the end of this event. I will do a last session in about 15 minutes to wrap up everything and do some maybe highlights about what I keep from this event. If you'd like to join me and let me know what your highlights were, what you would like to remember, any inspirations you got, feel free to join me. Eva says muchas gracias. So muchas
De nada.
gracias for joining us as well. Yes, so I see you all in about 15 minutes. And thank you very much again, Ute, for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Yoshita.